Hey y'all, my name's Carl. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new While She Sleeps album, So What. While She Sleeps is a metalcore band hailing from Sheffield, England. This is their fourth studio LP, and they've kind of gained quite a bit of popularity over the past couple years. Their 2017 LP, You Are We, is the first album of theirs that got my attention. I wasn't really familiar with them before that, but I saw a lot of people posting about that album, and I listened to it, but it didn't really grab my attention. So going into this new album, I didn't really have much of a reference point as far as what I was expecting from this band sound-wise. So when I review this album, just know that I'm reviewing it as I hear it. I'm calling it as I see it. I'm not going to reference their older music and be like, this is a mature song compared to their older material. I'm listening strictly to this album because their older stuff, frankly, just didn't really grab my attention. And unfortunately, I have to say the same thing for this new album. It comes in at 48 minutes across 11 tracks, and I have to say there were only intermittent moments where I felt like the songs were actually keeping my attention. I was largely uninterested in most of these songs, not to say that they were bad or the worst that I've ever heard, but just not really interesting, kind of boring, kind of predictable and repetitive. Most of these songs feel like they were written around the big arena rock chorus that shows up on just about every single one of these songs, and everything else was just lazily tacked on at the end. Now, granted, there are some songs where there's a decent riff or a fun, electronic break in the action, and there are some interesting elements on some of these songs, but largely across this entire track listing, I just didn't really find many of those moments. And those moments were incredibly few and far between, so when they did show up, they were usually at the end or at the very beginning of a song, and they didn't last for too long, so I'm getting like maybe 10% of the album actually keeping my attention, and the rest is just kind of there. The choruses, they're very arena rock and kind of stadium metal, something like you'd hear on the radio almost. And yeah, there are some riffs on here that qualify as metalcore, but by and large, I don't even feel comfortable calling this a metalcore record. It feels more like a radio metal record, something like you'd hear, from a band that you'd see on tour with like Five Finger Death Punch or something. I was kind of surprised because a lot of metalcore fans love this band, and this doesn't really strike me as a metalcore record. The tracks So What and Guilty Party are probably the most interesting tracks on this record, and yet they're the ones that were good by virtue of not being completely uninteresting the entire time. It feels like when the band chooses to go a little more up-tempo and include some of those more metalcore riffs and punk drums and really in-your-face production, that's when they succeed. But most of the time they choose to go a very predictable route structurally, where the verse shows up, then the chorus, then the verse, then a chorus, and then maybe a riff at the end, and it's over. The song structures are incredibly predictable. They're kind of tired by the end of the album. And I will say, for the closing track, which is 5.5 minutes, and every single track except for one on this album exceeds 4 minutes in length, even the good songs I feel like run on a little too long for me to truly enjoy them, because the band is just packing so much dead weight into some of these songs that I just don't feel like I can truly enjoy them. Songs like Set You Free and Good Grief, the former of which sounds like a metal cover of a Neck Deep song, and the latter of which features this kind of rapping. I don't know if it's a feature or if it's the vocalist doing the rapping, but just doesn't really pay off. Although I will say that I can commend the band for taking risks. These two songs in particular, towards the end of the track listing, kind of encapsulate my frustration with this entire record. The band is choosing to take risks and choosing to write some fairly interesting choruses. They're just predictable and they kind of fall flat. The song Back of My Mind, which is the second to last song on the album, features a really cool riff and breakdown at the end of the song that actually I thought was probably the coolest individual moment on the entire record. And yet it comes 10 songs, 40 plus minutes into the track listing. I just can't justify listening to an album that doesn't reach its peak until the very end of the record. Likewise, the closing track, Gates of Paradise, as I alluded to earlier, is 5.5 minutes of mostly dead weight. I completely dissociated while listening to this song. Just doesn't really achieve much as a closing track, and I feel like a lot of these tracks do the same thing. They show up, and they're there, and then they're gone. You know, they're fairly bland, fairly uninteresting, as I mentioned. You know, again, these songs aren't bad. I don't hate this album. I just don't really feel any desire to listen to it ever again. I don't really feel like if I were to put it back on, I would gain any new insight. I don't think I missed anything bigger here. Now, like I said, I don't have much to draw off of from this band's previous material, but if this is what's to expect from them moving forward, I just don't think I can justify getting on that hype train that they have. And if this is your thing, cool. You know, a lot of people love this band, and I really respect that. They have a dedicated following. They're at least doing something that isn't bad. It's just not for me. So while I was a bit frustrated with how kind of repetitive and bland these songs were, I can at least respect the musicianship and the production, and I think that this band, for whatever people see in them, has something going for them. I'm feeling a 5 out of 10 on this one. Again, not bad, but not really all that interesting. Thanks for watching. Check out my other reviews. I'll have some banners popping up across the screen if you're interested. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share and leave me some comments. So, as always, thanks for watching. See you.